I would like my living to inhabit me the way rain, sun, and their wanting inhabit a fig or an apple. I would like to meet it also in pieces, scattered, a conversation set down on a long hallway table, a disappointment pocketed inside a jacket, some long ago longing glimpsed, half recognized, in the corner of a thrift store painting. To discover my happiness, walking first toward, then away from me down a stairwell on two strong legs, all its own. Also, the uncountable wheat stalks, how many times broken, bent, sent between grindstones before entering the marriage of oven and bread. Let me find my life in that too. In my moments of clumsiness, solid days of vertigo and hesitation, in the many year ends that found me standing on top of a stovetop to take down a track light. In my nights asked and sometimes answered questions. I would like to add to my life, while we are still living, a little salt and butter, one more slice of the edible apple, a teaspoon of jam, from the long simmered fig. To taste as if something tasted for the first time. What will we have become then?
My big sister had gone off to the first grade in 1969, and I was very lonely and sad, and I missed her. I would have breakfast with her, and then I'd go down to where we had the one TV and watch Kimba the White Lion on television. Now, does anybody remember Kimba? It was actually a Japanese anime production. It was my favorite. I loved the theme song. I was very into Kimba. One morning, my mom came down the stairs, and she sat with me on the couch, and she said, "Honey, Kimba the White Lion isn't going to be on anymore." And I was absolutely stricken. But she continued, "But there's this new show that I heard about that I heard is really good. Would you like to watch it together?" And I said, "Okay." And we snuggled up together and watched the first ever episode of a new show called Sesame Street. Yeah, go ahead. Oh my gosh, I still remember the first time I heard that theme song, "Sunny Day," and all the kids' voices. And I was instantly enchanted by the Muppets, the wonderful, dear, funny, eccentric creation of the genius Jim Henson, those Muppets who have accompanied us through so much history. They are true friends. They are pure hearts. And I think that the Muppets have had a beautiful ministry to the world since they made their debut that November day, almost 54 years ago. You all know Elmo, right? Okay, I saw somebody's wearing an Elmo shirt today. Love to see that. So Elmo came along a bit later in Sesame Street's history, in its run. He came along around 1980, so you may have not grown up with him, but your kids or your grandkids certainly know him. He's the little red guy who speaks in an enthusiastic falsetto, and he is 3.5 years old, perpetually. He may drive you a little crazy with his sing-song cadence. And thoughts and prayers if you were one of the people trying to obtain a Tickle Me Elmo doll at the height of the craze in 1996. But Elmo is also a pure heart. And Elmo got himself into a really big situation a couple of weeks ago when he posted this question on Twitter. Elmo is just checking in. How's everybody doing? Tens of thousands of people responded. Tens of thousands. And they were not cute about their responses. They were very honest and raw. This is some of what Elmo got in response to his query. The world is burning around us, Elmo. And this one I loved. Elmo, girl, I'm having a quarter-life crisis right now. I can't get my act together to finish this semester. I'm mentally burnt out, and I have a lifetime of working to go. Someone simply posted, suffering. There was a lot along these lines, interspersed with some positive responses. Someone asking Elmo how he himself was doing, and another person, a celebrity rapper, I can't remember who it was, asking Elmo if he would check in on Oscar, because Oscar, as you may know, is quite grouchy most of the time. It's kind of his brand. Tens of thousands of people sharing their feelings with a Muppet. Not even in person, online. What Elmo really did was the foundation of pastoral ministry. So it seemed important to think about this story with you in church. There's a lot going on there. What Elmo did was create a space for people to be authentic because he asked a question that was open-ended, and so therefore he opened a door of spiritual hospitality. And because he lives in people's imaginations as a loving friend, they were able to walk into the space he provided and just for a moment to share honestly how they're doing. Now, typically we exchange the question, how are you, as a perfunctory greeting. In Boston, in the Boston area, Massachusetts, it usually goes, hey, how are you? How you doing? How you doing? And you do the nod or the smile, and you don't really expect a response. You passing by, it's a social nicety, nothing much meant by it. And that's fine. But among friends even, there is a particular pitch that accompanies the how are you. And I know this will sound familiar to you. It's accompanied by a big smile, and it goes like this, how are you? Right? And the big smile, how are you? So there's really no space for anything but the response, fine. It always interests me how the dynamic of that inquiry changes in cases where we know there is a struggle or where there is loss, where there is active suffering. The tone lowers. There is an implication of sympathy or care, sometimes even worry. How are you? When we make that shift, we interrupt the automatic smiles and breezing by each other that is so frequent, and it can feel very awkward and risky for both parties in that moment. So if you have felt that, that's completely normal. If someone looks you in the eyes and asks, how are you really? Or, are you okay? What's your first instinct? What's your first bodily reaction? Now, speaking for myself, I sometimes experience panic, some anxiety spike. My mind goes through 1,000 calculations. Somebody's asking me how I'm really doing. Where are we? How private is it? What is my relationship to this person? Do we have an established mutual trust between us? How can I express something quickly? Can I open up without doing what we now refer to as a trauma dump? And I sometimes freeze. And you might have seen me do this. Some of you have said to me, how are you really doing? Like after, I've suffered a loss. And you can see me go sometimes like, how much time have you got? If I am the one asking this question, are you okay? How you doing? I know that the other person is very likely doing their own quick mental calculations. When I considered how it was that the character Elmo elicited so much response from the general public, I thought about, well, Elmo represents a childlike sweetness and, again, pureness of heart. And he also represents an imaginary but very real community of Sesame Street, where we are all neighbors. And many of us live on Sesame Street in our hearts and imaginations and memories. Elmo and I, therefore, have friends in common. We know Kermit the Frog, Grover, Ernie and Bert, Big Bird, Oscar the Grouch, Cookie Monster. So when Elmo shows up and says he wants to check in, we know where he's checking in from. And it's a place of caring about and knowing each other. This generates so much immediate trust and familiarity. It's easier to construct that tabernacle of spiritual hospitality in those places. And this is why we create community in church. If you watch early clips of Sesame Street, and lots of them are available on YouTube, you will notice the way Muppets really listen to children. You get a beautiful lesson in spiritual hospitality. I don't know how they do it. Made of cloth and with googly eyes, like pasted on. Those characters managed to be really present and loving. Watching clips all of these decades later, I'm sometimes brought to tears by the gentle sweetness and humor of it. When Elmo asked us all how we were doing, it opened a door not just for trust, but also that door into the imagination of a child and the playfulness of a child, where we have no self-consciousness talking to a friendly little puppet. We went right there to that same enchanted reality where angels and guardian spirits operate. The foundation of all ministry, of the ordained or the laity, is presence. The willingness to put aside other distractions and wherever we're going, our agenda, and to really see that person in front of us in that moment, and to go slowly and attentively enough about our lives to allow for opportunities to have those encounters. Presence is a powerful antidote to dehumanization, exploitation, and objectification, all of which can only occur when people avoid making themselves emotionally and physically available to the unknown other. Presence is the heart of empathy. When we practice presence, we shift our consciousness from I do this, or I need to get this done, I need this to happen, me and mine need this, to an inclusive attention that is another name for love. As a spiritual practice this week and maybe weeks to come, I encourage you to check in with yourself during all your encounters with other people, especially those more fleeting ones that are likely to just kind of breeze by really quickly. What are you noticing about those encounters? When you see another person, what immediately comes to mind? Is it a judging or assessing kind of thought? That would be really normal. Assessment of how much you enjoy or don't enjoy, or respect how they're doing something. We're constantly making a million little judgments all the time. We are constantly evaluating, what do they look like? What do they seem like? Do I approve of what they're doing? This is all really typical. It's good to notice it. So after you notice it, whatever is coming through your mind, you can ask a version of Elmo's question. I wonder how this person is doing. I wonder how this person is doing. And then leave a space for the awareness that you really have no way of knowing. Because we are all a mystery to each other. And despite what appearances may seem to reveal, we really don't know unless we ask. And the only way to get comfortable asking each other is to accompany each other through life, being willing to listen to and to share the experiences of what it's really truly like being us, being alive in this world. With all the pain, the ugliness, the goodness, all of it. If we don't build the trust and create spaces for spiritual hospitality to allow for all this, all we ever have between us is guesses, projections of our own shadow aspect, and assumptions about one another. And that can be the person who's sleeping next to you in your bed, or it can be the person across the world. If you have the time and inclination for another practice to add to that one in coming weeks, you can make brief contact with everyone you meet. And if it feels right, extend a genuine greeting. I like to, especially in places where I see somebody being real stressed out, like retail establishments or places like that, I like to say, in a lighthearted way, "You doing okay?" And I notice that this question almost always generates a very swift intake of breath for people. And you can see the wheels turning as they think, am I okay? The other day on the Linway while I was walking my dog, I saw a young woman wearing a sweatshirt that said, "It's okay to not be okay." And I was like, yes! And I wanted to talk to her, but she was, doing kind of an exercise walk, and she had earbuds in, so I didn't interrupt her. But I thought, what a cool ministry it would be to get that sweatshirt and wear it and make yourself available for that impromptu ministry of listening. And if you have a cute dog with you, I'm telling you, you will get stopped. You can also ask yourself how you're doing, in case no one has asked you recently. Families, friends, couples can do this for each other. Or you can practice this with an animal companion or with nature, creation. When you ask, realize that it may take a while for an honest response to arise. There is no correct response. And sometimes the person being asked, "How you doing?" or you may not really know. But keep checking in. It matters that the question is asked and the space created for the heart to speak. Thank you, Elmo, for asking us how we're doing and simply remaining present while we told you. One woman said, "I'm having a rough time, Elmo. Love you, though." And Elmo said, "Elmo loves you today and every day." Thank you, Elmo, for reminding us that while we cannot fix all the problems, the fears, the violence and turmoil of our world, listening and love truly do create a sacred space and a foundation we can lean on.